All right, on this one, guys, it says, how many solutions do the equations below have if we solve? So it's not asking you to actually solve this. It's just asking how many how many answers would we have if we did end up going through and solving these. So what we know is that you always look at the highest degree, and that's how many solutions you'll have. That's called the fundamental theorem of algebra. So the fundamental theorem of algebra just says whatever the highest degree is, that's how many solutions you'll have. So in this one, we would have 3 solutions. The answer for this one would be 3. You look at this next one, 3x squared plus 4x minus 3. You just look at the largest degree, that is 2. So this one will have 2 solutions, 2 answers. Solutions and answers are the same thing. And then 2x minus 3, this would have 1 solution because there's really a 1 there. So this would have 1 solution. So once again, the fundamental theorem of algebra says that however many, how do I say this? The largest degree is the number of solutions you have. There we go. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Okay, we're going to work on factoring some more today, so let's go through and factor this. So first things first, we always look to see, do we have something in common that we can pull out from the beginning? And if not, we'll move on. So looking at this, 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. There's nothing in all 3 terms that we have in common, so we can't pull anything out. So then I'm going to go through and list. My a is equal to 2 because it's in front of x squared, just like over here. And then my b is equal to 11. And we're just talking the numbers. Don't write down, it's not, a is not 2, it's not 2x squared. It's just 2. It's the numbers in front of x squared, in front of x, and then our constant. So then c is equal to 12. So then we can go on to step 2, because step 1, there was nothing in common. Move on to step 2. So what we're doing is what multiplies to be a times c and adds up to be b. I always draw my little chart. So then a times c, don't write that, don't do 2 times 12, actually multiply it out. 2 times 12 is 24, so it multiplies to be 24 and adds up to be 11. I go through and list all the factors of 24 so that we can look at what we could choose from. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Those things all multiply to be 24. They're all factors of 24. So which ones could add up to be positive 11? Could 1 and 24 ever add up to be 11? No. 2 and 12 could never add up to be 11. 3 and 8? Yes, that could add up to be 11. Let's check 4 and 6. Nope, that would add up to be 10. Okay. So positive 3 and 8 could add up to be 11. Now we need it to add up to be positive 11. So both of those would have to be positive. But does that work? We have to check in both cases because positive 3 times positive 8 has to equal this thing over here. So it does. Truly, positive 3 times positive 8 equals positive 24. The signs have to be right too, remember. And then truly 3 plus 8, so positive 3 and positive 8 would add up to be 11. It works in both cases. So this is where I write. My factors are positive 3, and I'm going to write over here positive 8. Okay, so now we're going to move on. This is where we drop and break. So I'm going to write down the original problem, 2x squared plus 11x plus 12. This is where we drop and break. So we're going to drop down our n terms, So drop down our n terms here. So we'll have 2x squared and positive 12. The sign always has to drop down with it. 2x squared and positive 12. And then we're going to break down our middle term, meaning we're going to rewrite our middle term as the 2 factors we just found. So we found that we were going to use positive 3 and positive 8. Now you can't put in positive 3 and 8 in here. We were talking 11x. We're rewriting 11x as the 3 and the 8. So they're going to be x's. So don't forget. So we have plus 3x plus 8x. Now we could have put plus 8x first and then plus 3x next. It doesn't matter the order. Once you get to the final answer, you'll get the same thing. It's going to factor differently a little bit, but it will be the same answer, okay? Okay, so once again, I rewrote 11x. I broke it, drop, and break. The green part is the break. We're breaking down our middle term. We're rewriting 11x as positive 3x and 8x. So then you throw your parentheses around your first 2 terms. You throw your parentheses around your second 2 terms. And then you're going to focus in the groups and factor out what you have in common in the groups. So in 2x squared plus 3x, what do we have in common? We need to pull out the greatest thing in common, and that's going to be just an x. So then we're writing what we have left inside. So remember, if you have to write the x above it, because remember, if we pulled it out, then what's left inside is what is left after we divided out the x. So 2x squared, we pulled out an x, that leaves me with 2x left inside there because 2x squared, and if we pulled out an x, that would leave me with 2x. And then plus 3x, we divided out an x, so that leaves me with plus 3. Okay, now I'm going to move on to this group right here. I'm going to pull out the greatest thing we have in common, 8x plus 12x, and it looks like the greatest thing they have is a 4. So I'm going to pull out a 4. So then left inside, now once again, if I write the 4 above, it helps me kind of see what I'm going to have left. 8x divided by 4 is 2x, and then I have plus or minus, depending on what you're looking at here. So it looks like 12 divided by 4 is positive 3, so plus 3. So then you have a safe haven. If you get the same exact thing, including the sign has to be the same, everything has to be the same on the inside of the parentheses, that's our safe haven. So we know for sure we've done this right because these two things are the same. So our final step is to, well, not final, but we're getting there. Our next step is to pull out our safe haven. So we're going to pull out, since we have a 2x plus 3 in both, we'll pull that out. 2x plus 3. So we pulled that out of both. Now, if we pulled it out of both, you need to understand, it means we divided it out. So then that left me with an x and a positive 4. So that left me with x plus 4. And now we're down to the linear factors. We're down to the linear factors, meaning these factors are both degree 1. And we have this equal to 0. We have this equal to 0. So now what the zero product property rule tells us is that we can set these factors individually equal to 0 and solve for x. So I'm going to set 2x plus 3 equal to 0. I'm going to go over here and set x plus 4 equal to 0. And then solve for x piece by piece. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So that leaves me with 2x is equal to negative 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to negative 3 halves. There's one of our answers. We know there's 2 for sure because it was quadratic, meaning degree 2, meaning we'll have 2 solutions. Subtract 4 from both sides. So we get x is equal to negative 4. And we got both our answers. Be really careful with your negatives and stuff, guys, because I was seeing a lot of errors. Okay, let's do another one. 2x squared minus 7x plus 6. Once again, the first thing I look at is to see if we have anything in common. So we don't have anything in common in all 3 terms. So I can go ahead and start doing what multiplies to be a times c and adds up to be b. A is equal to 2. I'm going to first write out what a, b, and c are. B is equal to negative 7, and then c is equal to positive 6. Okay, so a times c, I'll multiply to be a times c, adds up to be b. So a times c would be 12. 2 times 6 is 12, and b is negative 7. And then we're going to go through and start listing out our factors of 12. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and then 4 times 3. Wraps back around, we already have listed 3 and 4, so we don't need to list 4 times 3 as well. Go through and see which ones could possibly add up to be negative 7. 1 and 12 could never add up to be negative 7. 2 and 6 could never add up to be negative 7. 3 and 4, they could add up to be negative 7, but then they both have to be negative. Well, does that work? We have to have it work in both sides. So negative 3 times negative 4, does that equal positive 12? Yes. Okay, so we can actually use 2 negatives there. Interesting. So negative 3 plus negative 4 is truly negative 7. So check on both sides it works. So our factors are negative 3 and negative 4. So now we're going to drop and break. So we have 2, and we have x squared in our original problem minus 7x, and then plus 6 is equal to 0. We're going to drop and break. So dropping down our n terms, as you know, we always take the sign down with it. So we have 2x squared, we have positive 6 drop, and now let's break. I'll do it in purple so that you can keep focused on what we're doing. Breaking down the middle term. We're rewriting negative 7x as negative 3, and we have to put the x's with these. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and order it as negative 4x first. It doesn't matter the order, though, and then negative 3x. All right, now we can put parentheses around the first 2 terms. We can put parentheses around the second 2 terms. And now focus in groups. Let's focus on this first group here. Let's pull out everything we have in common. 2x squared minus 4x. Don't just pull out an x. There's more than that in common. There's a 2 and an x in common here. So I have 2x. And I'm pulling that out. Let's write what's left inside. So once again, if you have to write the 2x above to look and see what you're going to have left, that's fine. 2x squared, you divide it out of 2x, so that would leave you with 1x. And then right here, we have negative 4x. We pulled out of 2x, so the x's went away for sure. And then negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So we'll have x minus 2 left. Focusing on my next group here, we have negative 3x plus 6. Now, focus your attention. Notice how we have a negative in front here. Now, if it was a negative in the middle, like right here, we would leave it alone. We wouldn't do anything. But if we have a negative in front, like right there, we need to pull out a negative with our factor. So negative 3x plus 6, we're going to pull out everything we have in common. It looks like a 3 is in common, but I'm going to pull out a negative 3 because of that negative. And then that leaves me with, once again, if you have to write negative 3 above to see what you have left, that leaves me with an x when you take out a negative 3 out of negative 3x. And then we have a positive 6 we divided by a negative 3, and that leaves me with negative 2. Now, are we safe? Yes. This is our safe haven. They're exactly the same, even the signs. That would have to be true if we've done this correctly. If not, go back and see where you've made a sign error. All right, so now that's our safe haven. We'll pull it out. That means we're going to pull out x minus 2, which means we're dividing it out. It's gone. What does that leave me with? 2x minus 3. I got that from there. What was left? 2x minus 3. And now we're to our linear factors. We can set each of those equal to 0 and solve for x. So I'll set x minus 2 equal to 0 and 2x minus 3 equal to 0 and solve for x in each case. Add 2. X is equal to 2. There is one of my answers. I'm going to add 3. So we have 2x is equal to 3. Divide by 2. So x is equal to 3 halves is my second answer. Okay. Why aren't you drawing? Okay, anyways, moving on. Something just happened with my smartboard. Just a second. All right, we're back in business. Here we go. All right, I'm going to do another one. 4x squared plus 7x plus 3. The first thing we look at, is there anything in common? No, there's not. Not in all three terms anyway. So we can go through and do our first step. I'm going to write out what a, b, and c is before I get started. A, b is 7, c is equal to 3. So what multiplies to be a times c and adds up to be b, a times c would be 12. What adds up to be 12, what multiplies to be 12 and adds up to be 7. So 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, those all multiply to be 12. We want it to add up to be 7. Those will never add up to be 7. Those will never add up to be 7. These will, but they both have to be positive, so let's see if that works. Positive 3 times positive 4 does equal positive 12, and then positive 3 plus positive 4 is equal to 7. Works in both cases. So in this case, then, our factors are positive 3 and positive 4. Okay, so then we're to our drop and break part here. So our original problem was 4x squared plus 7x plus 3 is equal to 0. We're going to drop and break. Drop our n terms down. 4x squared, positive 3. And then we're going to break down our middle term. So rewriting 7x as positive 3x and positive 4x. I'm going to do it as positive 4x. First, it doesn't matter the order. Positive 4x and positive 3x. And then I'm going to throw parentheses around the first two terms. And then I'm going to throw parentheses around the second two terms. And then we'll focus on the groups and go through this piece by piece and factor those. 4x squared plus 4x. What do we have in common? A 4 and an x. So I'm going to pull out a 4x, leaving me with inside 4x squared. We pulled out a 4x, leaving me with x. 4x, we pulled out a 4x. Do not write 0. What's 4x divided by 4x? It's actually 1. So we have a positive 1 left. Common mistake right there for a lot of you. Now, positive 3x plus 3. We have a 3 in common, a positive 3 in common, so I'm pulling out a 3, and that leaves me with x plus. If we pull the 3 out of both of these, that would leave me with an x right there. And then 3 divided by 3 becomes a 1. And then we can check our safe haven. Safe haven. Yay! We're the same. We've done this correctly. So we can continue now. This is getting to our easy part here. We'll pull out our safe haven. So we'll pull out x plus 1. And that means it divided out. So then that leaves me with 4x plus 3. That was a positive 3. 4x and then plus 3. Now we can set those each equal to 0. The zero product property rule says we can set each of those individually equal to 0 and solve for x. Piece by piece, solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 1. So x is equal to negative 1. Subtract 3. So we have 4x is equal to negative 3. And then we'll divide both sides by 4. So x is equal to negative 3/4. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do one. Not this one, probably. This would be a good one to do, though. I'm not going to do this one, though, I think. Well, maybe I should. Maybe I should go through this one. Yeah, I'll go through this one. Okay, so once again, you look, is there anything in common in the beginning? Oops, I should have said it was equal to 0. And there's nothing in common. A is equal to 7. B is equal to negative 8. C is equal to negative 12. And then we're going to go through and do our little thing here. What multiplies to be A times C and adds up to be B? A times C is 7 times negative 12. What multiplies to be negative 84, 7 times 12, negative 84, and adds up to be negative 8. Okay, so let's go through and list out our factors of, let's just list out factors of 84. So obviously, you have 1 times 84 is 84, and then we have 2 times 42, and then do 84 divided by 3 is 28, so 3 times 28. And then let's extend that line because there's going to be some more. Let's go 28. Oh, wait. 84 divided by 4 is 21, so 4 times 21. And then 84 divided by 5, it's a decimal, we don't want that. 84 divided by 6, 6 and 14. And then we could keep going. I'm going to stop there and see if I have anything I can use yet. 1 and 84 could never add up to be negative 8. 2 and 42, never going to be adding up to negative 8. 3 and 28, that can't add up to be negative 8. 4 and 21 can't add up to be negative 8. 6 and 14, that could add up to be negative 8, but it needs to be negative 8. So my negative would have to be with my 14. Now we need to check it and make sure it works on the left as well. Does 6 times negative 14 equal negative 84? And it does, so we're good. So positive 6 plus negative 14, or 6 minus 14, is negative 8. So our factors, it works in both cases. Our factors are truly positive 6 and negative 14. So now we'll drop and break. So we have originally 7x squared minus 8x minus 12 is equal to 0. We're going to drop and break, dropping down my n terms. 7x squared, negative 12, don't forget to drop down the sign, and then break. Let's break down our middle term. So negative 8x, we're rewriting it as our factors. Now order doesn't matter, but we have to remember the x is with those. So I'll just do plus 6x, why not? And then minus 14x. Now we'll throw in, now make sure, notice I kept my signs correct here, so be careful as you do that. Throw parentheses around the first 2, throw parentheses around the second 2, and then focus in the groups and factor those. In 7x squared plus 6x, the greatest thing we have in common is an x. That leaves me with 7x plus 6, because once again, if I went through and divided an x out of those two things, that's what I'd be left with. Focusing on this next group, negative 14x minus 12. What's the greatest thing we have in common? They both have to divide by it, okay? So a 2, they both have a 2 in common, and then when we see a negative in front here, we'll always pull out a negative. So I'm going to pull out negative 2. That leaves me with, if you wrote negative 2 above these, sometimes it helps. Negative 14x divided by negative 2 is positive 7x, good. And then negative 12 divided by negative 2 is positive 6. Are we safe? Safe haven works. We're all good. So we can go ahead and factor that out. So since we have our safe haven, it's the exact same. Even if the signs were different, you've done something wrong. So we'll factor out our safe haven. We can pull it out since it's exactly the same. And then left would be x minus 2. Once again, my x came from there, my minus 2. Now our zero product property says we can split these up and individually set them equal to 0. 7x plus 6 is equal to 0, and x minus 2 is equal to 0. Piece by piece solving for x in each case. Subtract 6 from both sides. 7x is equal to negative 6. Divide both sides by 7. X is equal to negative 6/7. And there's one of my answers. And then over here, we'll add 2 to both sides. X is equal to 2. My other answer. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to show you one because A lot of people had a hard time with something like this. Let me hurry and quickly show you this one. Let's say we had something like this. This is a good one to watch. This one confuses a lot of people. Let's say we had 25x squared minus 5x is equal to 0. First things first, we have it already set equal to 0, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to factor this. But if you skip the first step, you are causing yourself a lot of heartache. I had a lot of people say to me, so would, in this case, C be 0 since we don't have the C? And the answer is yes, it would be. But that's going to be a lot harder to think about. So once again, I suggest from the very beginning saying, do we have something in both of these things that we can factor out from the very beginning? So notice in this 25x squared and 5x, we have something in common. We need to pull out the greatest thing. They both have a 5x. Now, we have to write what's left inside here. So once again, we've pulled out a 5x. If you need to think of it as well, I'm going to be taking a 5x out of these things, write it above it, and write what's left inside the parentheses here. So we have 25x squared. We pulled out a 5x. 25 divides by 5 and becomes a 5. And then x squared divided by x is x. X squared divided by x is x. Now notice, guys, just make a note. If we multiply the 5x back in, we would have 25x squared where we started. So that's how we know we've done it right. That was just a little side note. Okay. Okay. So then we pulled out a 5x out of both of these things. So then 5x divided by 5x is not nothing. It's 1. So we have minus 1. And now, once again, these are just linear factors. We're done. We don't have to go any further. We can set them individually equal to 0. So, we can set them individually equal to 0 and solve for x. So we have 5x is equal to 0, and we have 5x minus 1 is equal to 0, and then piece by piece solve for x, divide both sides by 5. 0 divided by 5 is 0, guys, and yes, you can get 0 as an answer. 0 is a number, and then we'll add 1. 5x is equal to 1 divided by 5. So x is equal to 1/5. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you how to solve a quadratic when you're missing the bx. So notice we have ax squared plus bx plus c. If I took away the bx, we would have this thing right here. Notice how bx is missing. So if you're missing a bx, it's way easy to solve the quadratic equation. You could solve it by factoring if it's factorable, but I would suggest just not and using this way. This is a different method. Okay, so what you'll do if you're missing a bx is you can solve for x by, first of all, isolating x squared, getting x squared completely by itself, and then second of all, taking the square root. And you got to take the square root of both sides. So just a side note, the square root is the inverse of something squared. So the root undoes the power. We won't get into y right now because we'll talk about that later, but you'll just have to remember that you take the square root of something squared and it undoes it. And then we have to account for the plus and minus answer. When we take the square root of something, you have to, and we're solving, I should say that. When we take the square root of something and we're solving, you have to account for the plus and minus answer. So we can't forget that, okay? And I'll show you why in the next problem. First example, x squared is equal to 25. Okay, once again, I'm missing bx. Notice there's no middle term. There's nothing with an x. So we can solve this the easy way. First of all, we're going to isolate x squared. It's already isolated. So second of all, second step, we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we'll take the square root of both sides. Now my root cancels out my power, leaving me with x is equal to, we can't forget the plus and minus answer. Plus and minus the square root of 25. Now we have to do the square root of 25. If you did it on your calculator, it's square root of 25 is 5. So we have x is equal to plus and minus 5. So what I want you to do is split that up, because really what plus and minus 5 means is we have x is equal to positive 5 and x is equal to negative 5. We have both answers. And that makes sense. We should have two answers because it was degree 2 to begin with. And we know that if that's the case, we have two answers. If you forget the plus and minus sign, or if you forget to split them up and write both answers, you get it wrong. Okay, let's do another one. X squared minus 2 is equal to 23. We're going to solve for x, but we don't want to solve using factoring. Notice we're missing the middle term. We're missing bx. There's nothing with an x in this. So we can solve for x the easy way. Let's isolate x squared before we do anything. You have to isolate x squared completely. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So that leaves me with x squared is equal to 23 plus 2, which is 25. Okay? Now we've isolated x squared, so now we'll take the square root of both sides. So our root cancels out with our power. So we get x is equal to plus and minus. We can't forget the plus and minus after the square root of 25 is 5. So I am asking you to split that up. X is equal to positive 5, x is equal to negative 5. Now the reason that is because what this means, guys, is if you think about it, if we have x squared is equal to 25, and we plug in a 5, 5 squared is equal to 25, that is a true statement. Positive 5 squared is 25. But what if we threw in a negative 5? Is it still positive 25? Negative 5 squared? Well, yeah, and you have to use parentheses if you were to type that into your calculator to check it. But yeah, negative 5 squared just means negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25. So that's why both answers work here. Okay, now keep in mind, guys, if you have something like this, 2x squared minus 7 is equal to 8. Now we would solve for x. We could solve for x using the same method really quick. We would add 7. We have to isolate x squared, so we'd add 7. So we have 2x squared is equal to 15, and then we divide by 2. Now, for today's lesson, I'll let you use decimals for this lesson, but usually, and later on, we'll learn how to actually simplify this the way you would see it on an ACT or on an end of level. So 15 divided by 2 is 7.5, and then we take the square root of both sides, because we've isolated x squared. Before we take the square root, though, if you were to take the square root back here, you would have been wrong, because you forgot to get rid of the 2 first. Okay, so then you take on your calculator and type in the square root of 7.5, which is 2.7. So x is it's 2.7386. It's a huge decimal, so I'll round it. So it's approximately equal to 2.73, or if I would have rounded, I probably should have done 2.74. Okay, alrighty. Anyways, that's the video. Thank you for watching.